Hello, this is What's It All About with another watch review, and in this review we're looking at one of the latest offerings from Nth. Nth is a sister company by Chris Vale of Lew & Hugh, which I've reviewed a few watches of before, but Nth is a much more serious affair of watches, and as you can see I also have another one of their watches here, but that'll be covered in another review. So this one in particular is the Nth Amphion. And the version we have here particularly is called the Dark Gilt, which I personally think it is probably one of my favourite out of the lot, so I'm pretty chuffed to have this in for review. So talking about the price then, straight away it's $625, or that equates to around £470. So, when you immediately think of it, you do think, oh, it is a little bit on the higher side of things for a micro brand, especially when it houses a Miyota 9015 movement. You can get some watches housing the same movement for a couple of £100 cheaper. So let's have a look at it in detail, see if it is a lot of watch for the money. So let's start off by speaking about the specs. So we have a pretty nice size. 40mm in diameter. I've got a 7¼ inch wrist, so 40mm in diameter, a pretty low and comfortable height of 11.5mm, and then a lug to lug length of 48mm. So immediately a very nice size. I personally think my sweet spot is around 40mm. 40, if you go up 42, 43, you do start getting on the larger side of things, which I still don't mind, but I think there's something about 40mm which really looks very, very smart, compact on the wrist, and it wears really well as well. Weight to go along with the size is 141 grams, and I've got a good couple, 2 or 3 links removed out of it. Potentially it could weigh a little bit more, but it's good weight to give you a nice sense of quality. Obviously it's thanks to the bracelet and just the general construction of the watch. So good weight to it. Water resistance, we have pretty tasty 30 atmospheres or 300 meters. So it's most certainly suitable for diving. Probably not extreme deep sea diving, but certainly enough for scuba diving or just general swimming that most of us would be dealing with. So that's reassuring to know. Movement, as I mentioned, was a Miyota 9015 movement. Now you can't actually see it because we have a solid case back, but it's not a particularly gorgeous movement anyway, so it's not really the end of the world. Has good specs, so it's a cheap, affordable equivalent of all the good, popular Swiss-made automatics. So 28.8 thousand beats per hour, so 8 ticks a second. You can see it has a nice, smooth sweep to the seconds hand. Approximately 40 hours power reserve as well. Hacking seconds hand and hand winding capabilities, and obviously a date indicator as well. The accuracy on that, I've put it on my Lepsy watch scope, and it's coming in at plus 9 seconds a day, so perfectly acceptable for a watch movement that's not COSC certified. I have seen 9015s regulated to within COSC, the potential is there for it to be plus or minus 5 seconds a day. We'll see if any of the finished models will be regulated to that level. Lug width 20mm, and that tapers down ever so slightly. Just so you can see there, I have a slight taper if we compare the buckle to the lug width. So a very nice and suitable size bracelet. Finally, we have a 2-year warranty, so if you do have any issues, 2 whole years, you're covered, so that's good. Right, so let's discuss each element in detail. So the general appearance of the watch is definitely a vintage inspired, diver kind of feel to it. We have a number of well-known Rolexes, Tudors, which match this kind of appearance, which I personally think is a really nice direction that Ents are going into, because vintage style watches are certainly coming back in fashion. But this one is just really, really smart looking, and it's almost like a crossover with a tool watch as well. So they've done an excellent job with the design. So if we just have a look at the dial, we have a nice matte black base to it, and then these gold accents thanks to the hands and the hour markers as well. Our printing is very subtle as well. We have just the nth logo in the top half, the minute track, and then Amphion and the water resistance in the bottom half. Quite subtle, which is nice, I think. You know, it's like this goldy colour font, so it doesn't stand too sharp in contrast with the rest of the dial, so it keeps it quite subtle. I also really like the shape of the hands, a little bit different. So we have a sword, a white, quite a thick sword hour hand, and then a more syringy type minute hand. Very well manufactured though, and the loom on everything is actually really, really good. Our seconds hand, as you can see, is quite simple straight point with just a simple little arrow towards the end. So looking at our hour markers, you can see they're quite nice and accurate. We'll have a look in closer detail with the macro lens on in a bit. And then our date window in between 4 and 5 is quite discreet as well. In fact, you can barely see the transition between the date wheel and the dial itself, which is quite a cool little touch. Okay, so moving on to the case. Firstly, the bezel. What a lovely bezel it is. The action to the bezel. I know Chris Vale is a real sucker for bezel mechanism and movements, and it really does show, because this bezel is so nice. You probably can barely hear it, but it gives a really satisfying deep clunk as you rotate it. Really solid clicks, and there's no wiggle whatsoever, with no backwards play at all, and it lines up perfectly as well. So really, really impressive bezel mechanism. Very nice bezel insert as well. Now I don't think it mentioned it at all what it was on the website, but it looks like ceramic insert to me. I really like the full markings all the way around to 60 as well. I think that creates a nice different appearance. And then the what's quite unusual is usually you have like a bulbous lume pip at 12, but I actually really like the way that it's all so smooth, and this little detailing around the 12 with the red triangle is really smart as well. I think the bezel has a lot to say about the general aesthetics to the watch. So decent grip as well, really easy to use, really nice. All of the bezel markings are filled with lume as well. The lume is pretty strong, and as we move on to the crown, this nth engraving also has a lume within it, which is pretty awesome. I've never actually seen that before. I'm sure there's other watch manufacturers who do it, but I've never really noticed it as much as what Ents have done here. So have a look at the full review when it's posted to have a look at some pictures of that, but it is seriously amazing. So the case itself, really, really well machined. Pretty standard shape, but without any crown guards, and the oversized crown definitely goes towards the vintage range of of what we're expecting to see here. Fully brushed, apart from a very subtle polished shoulder, and then if we flip it over, we see here another polished bottom shoulder, and then just polished ridge to the case back. Case back of which is screw in and extremely simple. You can't really go wrong with that. Just automatic sapphire and the grade of steel 316L. So very simple. The general machining is pretty much flawless. Extremely well put together, and really, really impressive. The grip of the crown as well is really nice. Good thread on that when you unscrew it as well. Lugs are drilled through, so it's nice and easy to change your strap. Just literally push your tool through there, and that'll squeeze the pin together, and then you can pop it out. So that's always nice to see. Moving on to our bracelet then. Fully brushed, apart from our sides, which are polished, brushed underside as well. We have screw-in links, which I like because it makes changing a lot easier than standard pins. I do know that Chris makes sure that the manufacturers put a tiny little bit of Loctite in the screw as well, so hopefully you'll never get one loosening on its own and fall out, so because that's really the main issue with screw-in pins. I haven't found any loosen, but I've only had the watch for less than a week, so I can't say for sure how it will behave on the long run. Moving on to the bracelet. So a double locking mechanism. So firstly, we have our click down, which is released by the two side pushers, and then we have our top flap as well with the ENTS logo lightly engraved on the top bar, but it seems pretty secure and nicely put together. So let's put the macro lens on and have a look at it in much closer detail. I'll just give it a quick wipe. So here's the dial. Ooh. Hands right in the way. So there's the logo. You can see printing and the same gilt print work on the minute track. Very nice goldy kind of complexion to it. And then Amphion there in the bottom half. Nice little dot in the O, makes it a bit interesting. There's our date window, so it's a circular date window. So you do notice at some angles the numbers can get cut off a little bit, but it's still perfectly legible. And here's our hands, so like a brushed kind of texture to them. And our second hand there, pretty flawless. And if we move on to our hour markers, I probably personally think that they could potentially be a little bit deeper, but they certainly are very nicely applied and nicely manufactured. It could just be the matte black of the dial gives the optical illusion that they're quite flat, but in reality when you get a sharp angle like this, you can see the depth of them and the fact that they actually are very nicely put together, good quality. So moving on to the case then, here's the bezel. This bezel insert, which is insanely accurate. Usually these kind of cutouts are a little bit choppy, but look how smooth and perfect that is. Very impressive. A little bit of a bulge there, but everything else is pretty spot on. And then our bezel grip, very nice grip there. Moving on to our case then, we have our brushed top and our polished shoulder and our brushed sides. There we have it. So moving on to our crown. So you can't actually see that it's filled with lume, but it most certainly is. There's the grip as well. You can see there, it's a very nice oversized shape, which I really like. Looking at the underside, so we have this cheeky little polished ridge at the bottom as well, and then just moving on to our case back, literally just ENTS and automatic engraved there, so that's quite straightforward. So looking at the buckle, the bracelet now. So there's the top. Nothing too exciting to report, but it is very smooth. Very smooth action to the bracelet. Buttery when you're wiggling it around. The screw links as well. And then if we just close our buckle and have a look at that briefly. So there's our light engraving of the top bar. But at least it is engraved and not laser etched, which a lot of manufacturers tend to do. Okay, so now I haven't had the watch for too long because of various time constraints. But my very short time I've been with this watch, I've pretty much fallen in love with that. I think it's one of the best watches Chris Vale has ever produced. Lou and Huey had some great watches, but I was never really a big fan of the branding and the design of the logo. Nth is another story though. The general design and feel of the watch is pretty spectacular. Obviously, you are paying for it. $625 or £470 is a lot of money. There's no doubt about it. You could get some fully Swiss-made watches for that price as well. But there's, without question, the quality is here. It is really, really exceptional. Just the general fit and finish of the watch is very, very good. It most certainly does match Swiss-made watches without a shadow of a doubt. Just simple things like the bezel mechanism, the insert. Just looking at the insert in the flesh is really, really nice. The design is top notch. The finish of the dial, the strength of the lume, the little cheeky little lume in the crown as well, and just the feel of the bracelet when it's on as well is just it's the whole package. It is a lovely watch. So yes, it is a little bit more expensive, but as the saying goes, you get what you pay for. So this is the Nth Amphion Dark Gilt, and that's what it's all about.